It's time for Johnny and the Professor. Common sense in senseless times.
You personally supported and voted for Hillary Clinton.
I was a very strong public supporter of Hillary Clinton, yes.
So you're not dismayed that people voted for her, but your testimony is that Google is, through bias in search results, manipulating voters in a way they're not aware of.
On a massive scale. And what I'm saying is that I believe in democracy, I believe in the free and fair election, more than I have any kind of allegiance to a candidate or a party.
You said in subsequent elections, Google and Facebook and Twitter and big text manipulation could manipulate as many as 15 million votes in a subsequent election?
In 2020, if all these companies are supporting the same candidate, there are 15 million votes on the line that can be shifted without people's knowledge and without leaving a paper trail for authorities to trace.
Now you described the Go Vote reminder, and you said it wasn't a public service announcement, but rather manipulation. Can you explain how?
In 2016, if Mark Zuckerberg, for example, had chosen to send out a Go Vote reminder, say just to Democrats, and no one would have known if he had done this, that would have given that day an additional at least 450,000 votes to Democrats. And in 2020, you can bet that all of these companies are going to go all out. And the methods that they're using are invisible. They're subliminal. They're more powerful than most any effects I've ever seen in the behavioral sciences. And I've been in the behavioral sciences for almost 40 years.
The number one financial supporter of the Hillary Clinton campaign in the 2016 election was the parent company of Google, Alphabet.
Okay.
Johnny and the Professor.
And another exciting episode of Johnny and the Professor.
Common sense for senseless times.
Where we talk politics, pop culture, and presidential.
Ah, okay. That works.
I don't know. I thought he was really presidential with his little Iran address the other day.
Yeah, it was amazing. I mean, of course, what we're talking about is President Trump talking about the situation with Iran. That probably, for the sake of listeners, go back, of course. Last week we got the United States blew up Qasem Soleimani, who is the head of the Revolutionary Guard Corps, which is called the Quds Force in Iran. He's like the number 2 man in Iran. He's been an international terrorist for 25 years.
Oh, how dare you say that?
Well, because I'm not a Democrat weeping for him, so therefore I will go ahead and say he was a rotten human being, and may he burn in hell. But we kind of decorated the Baghdad airport with him, and there was a huge issue, of course, Baghdad saying we're going to strike back, and of course they did. They ineffectively fired a bunch of missiles at our base in the province there, and no serious damage, no casualties. So it
seemed like they were just kind of having a tantrum. They were just throwing a tantrum a little bit.
I heard people talk about that who were saying, "Oh well, maybe they missed on purpose." And I go, I don't think you fire anywhere from 15 to 50, depending on who you ask, missiles, and not expect to hit something. I think they're underestimating our ability to defend ourselves too, because we have a lot of missile defense systems in our areas, and we're on alert. And anybody, I mean, we've been on alert ever since Soleimani, went up in a beautiful red rainbow, I'm assuming. So maybe they did miss, maybe they are having a tantrum. I think Iran does want to provoke the United States, and because they like the idea of maybe they didn't kill anybody, but now we counter-strike and kill 100 Iranians, and then they say, oh, well, we're the bad guys. But it was a hell of a risk, and I'm actually surprised.
What are you surprised about?
I was surprised. I thought that the president would do something militarily. I mean, he would strike some area, even if it was isolated and only hardware or whatever. And to actually say, okay, they're standing down, nobody died, so I'm not going to kill any of your people.
I think it's kind of like that whole drone thing when they destroyed one of our drones, and we were quick to, let's get them. And the story I got was like kind of at the last minute, Trump was like, wait a minute, how many of us died? None. Okay, well, I'm not going to go slaughter a bunch of them because they killed one of
500
our
of them
drones.
would probably died. What they're looking at, and in some way, I think that's what it is. Trump, like I said, he surprises me. I mean, because he's much more measured. He really is concerned about spending American treasure and blood. I mean, Iran needs to be dealt with. Yeah, no kidding. Iran's been a problem since Jimmy Carter's administration.
Right. And it's my understanding, and you're the history guy, so you would know if I was right or wrong on this. It's my understanding that President Jimmy Carter, when he buddied up to China, communist China, and worked out some deals with them, it betrayed Iran, Afghanistan, Angola, and some others. And then one of the terms from China saying, hey, you want to play around with us, then you have to cut your ties with Taiwan too. Otherwise, no deal. So, of course, Jimmy Carter went, oh, please, let me bend over for you, China. So, in addition to the Chinese being able to steal our technology, and it really screwed Americans, it also betrayed our allies in Iran, Afghanistan,
in the Middle East in general. It isolated the Middle East.
All because of what Carter did. He's a Democrat, by the way.
Right, yeah, he is. And Jimmy Carter strikes me as a nice man, and if he's building Habitat for Humanity houses, he's doing good work. But other than that, he was an incompetent buffoon. He was a horrible president.
Is that why he didn't get a second term?
He didn't get a second term also and got absolutely trashed by, of course, Ronald Reagan, probably one of the better presidents of the 20th century. So, and interesting enough, Iran, of course, in reaction and anger, took American hostages and kept them until Ronald Reagan became president. Remember, the 52 Iranian hostages were released the day Ronald Reagan took the office, because they told Jimmy Carter, we have no interest in respecting you at all, but the next president coming in is going to probably bomb the hell out of us, so we better let them go. And that's a weird situation with Trump, is that Iran is now sitting there looking at it right now and going, he didn't do anything.
Right.
So is he being weak? Or does he just not? Or does a wise man think he doesn't even really consider you a threat? He doesn't want to kill thousands of your people to make a point.
Right.
He would like you to change your behavior. Again, they have one major oil exporting port, and if we destroy that, 85% of their economy disappears.
Now, the toxic anti-Trumpers are going to find fault in no matter what he did or said, right?
They are, and that's something that was really what I learned this week that really amazed me, I guess, because I like to have more optimism in the human race than you do, for example, is that they killed Soleimani. He's a terrorist. He's a monster, okay? Hundreds of Americans are dead because of him. Thousands of Iranians are dead because of him. And yet we have democratic newspapers and media, which, of course, is there any difference between the Democrat and the media these days?
Right.
Other than us. And so they all were talking about, how that he read poetry and that he was a respected leader and a military genius.
Kind of like the ISIS guy.
Yeah, it was the same thing as when they killed al-Baghdadi.
Religious scholar, deceased, passes away, murdered.
I ask myself, when I look at that, when I look at the left, the media, and the Democrats in general, what do you stand for? You don't stand for anything, as far as I can tell. You only stand against something. You stand against Donald Trump. Donald Trump can do anything. I mean, killing al-Baghdadi was a good thing. Killing Soleimani was a good thing. But yet they're against him only because Trump has done it. And it's insanity. They're getting to the point of just looking totally insane. I mean, Elizabeth Warren, she came out and said it was a good thing that he was killed, and then got bashed by the media over this, and had to backtrack and say, well, I didn't think he should be assassinated and all that. And I mean, what do they? I guess the problem with the left and the Democrats right now is, what do you stand for? Do you stand for the people, low unemployment? Well, we already have low unemployment. Do you stand for more money in people's households? Well, in the last 3 years, household income has risen $5,000 in the Trump administration. In the entire Obama administration, only went up $1,000. So what do you stand for? And the answer is nothing at all, other than
open borders.
Open borders and anything we can do politically, and anything against Donald Trump. So the problem with that is that when Trump does something that's good, they can't even defend it. I mean, we have a trade deal with Mexico and Canada that got rid of the stupid NAFTA deal. The Democrats even worked with it, and they still don't like it.
You know who gave us NAFTA?
Well, yeah, that was a Democrat. You know, obviously, Bill Clinton was a big NAFTA guy.
Right.
So, I mean, this whole thing is just weird. And then, of course, them all screaming about Trump murdering this, you know, this man who reads poetry and has his flashing eyes and his. I mean, I swear, it sounded like a you know, love letter to this monster.
Right.
George Bush had 50. Again, this is from the New York Times, and the New York Times is one I don't generally quote unless it's something that I know that they have to be accurate about it, because it's something that doesn't make sense. Bush administration had about 50 drone strikes and killed about almost 300 terrorists and about almost 200 civilians in Yemen and Pakistan, Somalia. Obama authorized 506 strikes, killed over 3,000 terrorists and almost 400 civilians.
Wow.
And yet we don't pay any attention. Have you heard, I mean, other than the, you know, we fired Tomahawk missiles and destroyed that base, we wiped out Russian Mercs in Syria. I mean, but those have been direct military actions. This is the first time, I mean, I'm sure there are more of them, but the first time the news has actually come out and go, Trump used drone strike to take out bad guy. Even al-Baghdadi, they went in with special forces and Conan the dog and you know, made him crap his caftan and right before he died.
Wow.
So it's just weird that, you know, this idea that it has to be bad, and yet your former president that everyone thought was wonderful has done this 50 times as much as Trump has done it.
They don't tell you that, though.
No, but they don't want to tell you that. You know, it's just because...
Oh, it's propaganda. You're being a Trumper and a...
Except I'm quoting the New York Times here for this article.
Yeah, I'm trying to argue with you.
Yeah, well, like I said, sometimes it's better to, you know, just leave it alone, because, you know, I understand, you know, that there is. If you want me to play devil's advocate, and literally devil's advocate, because I think the devil's probably poking Soleimani in the butt with a pitchfork right now, I do have a small problem with this drone strike idea in general. I don't like the idea that a president of the United States can just say, this person is a threat to the United States of America, take him out.
Right.
I do have a problem with that. I mean, Bush did it, Clinton did it, Trump's done it, and Obama did it. Obama was, of course, the king of it. But I don't like the idea of it. I don't like the idea of just saying you can just... Because I keep waiting for Bernie Sanders will get elected president and declare war on Fox News. You know,
right.
We'll have drone strikes on Brett Baer or something, or definitely Sean Hannity. I mean, Sean Hannity definitely, I mean, according to, you know, Elizabeth Warren would be an enemy of the people. I mean, that's my problem. You go, well, we don't target Americans. Look over those civilian casualties, that, especially in the Obama administration. You'll find a few dozen Americans scattered in there, too.
Look what the Obama administration did to Rush Limbaugh. I mean, come on now.
Oh, yeah. And the Obama administration is the only one that ever, you know, went after the... Trump is... he's trying to destroy the news media, yet Obama actually investigated and tried to shut down people in the media directly. So
yeah, and who was the guy that made the documentary about him, and then got sent to prison for...
Oh, you're talking about Dinesh D'Souza.
Right.
Yeah,
Look what he did to him.
Yeah, and then all he did was... what he actually did is he did make an illegal campaign donation because he made it for somebody else or
right.
somebody else.
And exceeded the limit.
Exceeded the limit by like $5,000.
Right. Rosie O'Donnell did the same thing and just simply asked, "Oh, can I just have it back?" She didn't do any jail time.
Right.
You know.
But D'Souza ended up was going to spend 2 years in jail, and
right.
She spent time in jail and in probation, and then, of course, President Trump pardoned him.
And that's one of those deals where, and this is how they get you, and this is how they get you to plead guilty to something. Is well, you know, Dinesh, you sent this through the mail too.
Right. So mail fraud.
So mail fraud, and you know they tack on all these other things, and think about what that's going to do to your family and this and that. Well, if you just plead guilty to this one charge, you'll only do 18 months, maybe.
And from what I understand, the original promise was probably probation.
Right.
And of course, instead they put him in jail. Ha ha ha.
Yeah. And nobody else has ever
got jail time for the crime that he committed. Yes.
Right.
It's always been fees and fines. So I mean, obviously that, you know, And yet, who actually then is the person who has enemies, and when they have enemies, they punish them? That sounds like Barack Obama much more than Donald Trump. Donald Trump will punish his enemies directly. He'll look at them and go, bleep you, I can't finish that, or we won't get it on the air.
You mean he'll defend himself and then get called a bully for defending himself?
And of course, if he doesn't defend himself, he then of course is weak. So I mean, it's like he's weak for. And again, this is the whole point with Soleimani. Our embassy was attacked in Baghdad. No one was hurt, and they had an outer building burned in it. It was nothing like a Benghazi because they defended themselves. And Trump sent in more forces.
And Hillary wasn't involved too, right?
Well, Hillary Clinton would be definitely a way to get somebody killed as in foreign policy. But in the case of that, again, and written on the wall was we follow Soleimani. Somalia is our leader in all this. I mean, this guy's been wandering around the Middle East for 20 years, inciting terror left and right. And I give Iran credit for it. He's definitely the one who coordinates terror, but he has official government position.
Right.
So if you take him out, you're taking out a member of our government. And Trump said, "Yeah, I'm taking out a member of your government. Too bad."
How dare you? You are so toxic and full of hate.
Well, I'm not as explosive. That would be Soleimani. He was the one that was exploded, as the case may be.
Ooh.
The other interesting story that I think talk about before we get into our pop culture stuff, because we know we have a lot of Star Wars stuff to talk today, I thought was interesting that CNN settled out of court with the Covington High School student. Nick
did they? Now, these are the young men that were harassing the native elder with their MAGA hats and...
Some students harassing an older Native American man, a Vietnam vet, in the midst of a special ceremony.
It does look like that young man to me is taunting the Native American Vietnam vet.
This face-to-face confrontation igniting charges of racism.
The kid, Nick Sandman, he doesn't seem to be afraid, but he did make a choice, and that was to make it into a standoff. That was not a good choice.
Sandman has been suing he sued CNN and the Washington Post. I'm trying to remember the other organization, but 3 of them. And it's like a total of $500 million in damages between the 3. He was suing CNN for about $250 million in damages, and they settled.
Wow.
Okay. Generally, as a rule of thumb, a settlement has to be somewhere between 10 and 50% of what's asked.
Right.
Because the reason was the lawyers wanted total discovery, and they'd have to release all their email messages and all their transactions that were spoke during that time. And if that went to a jury about how horrible they treated this kid and how to destroy this kid's life,
right,
they'd have given him the $250 million.
Yeah.
I don't know what he got, but let's say a minimum of $25 million, and it's maybe up to as much as $75 to $100 million out of CNN. there's some justice in that, and I can tell you right now, if I were the Washington Post and NBC is the other one that they sued, I would be thinking serious about doing that too, because if it goes to trial, again, it's a civil suit. It will go to a jury, and a jury requires only a majority to agree. It isn't like a criminal system that's 100%. I mean, it's 9 is all you need for a civil suit.
That's not the only recent media lawsuit. I think Melania Trump won a lawsuit with the media, with their fake news stuff, but you don't hear a lot about it.
But unless you actually, you might, if you actually look for more conservative news sources, you might hear on. You heard it mentioned on Daily Wire, for example, with Michael Knowles and Andrew Klavan, who we both had on the show last month, by the way.
Right.
Plug. Which I think we're going to get him next month too. That's what it looks like. I mean, you might if you do that, but other than that, I mean, CNN doesn't want to talk about this stuff. It makes Trump and his people look better, and it makes them look bad.
Right.
They're not in the news business. They're in the propaganda business. I mean, I've heard, CNN, the communist news network.
And then MSNBC or something like MSDNC or something.
Yeah, I mean, it's gotten to the point of being ridiculous. And the weird part is people say, well, Fox, I go, if you don't listen to the commentary on Fox, I mean, Sean Hannity, Tucker Carlson.
They admit their views, though.
They admit their views, though. Again, Tucker Carlson doesn't like the actions. He doesn't like military action. He's pacifistic. Sean Hannity's, kill them all.
He's gung-ho, yeah.
Yeah, he's very much, and like I said, I think, and I'm more of the line of use force when you need to. I think the president and I are on the same page on this, so therefore he must be right. Use force when you need it, but use it like a scalpel. cut things out as needed. You don't need to hit them with a sledgehammer. If Iran kills Americans or we get some issues, then take out their oil production, take out their air bases. But spare as many of the Iranian people as you can, because if you take out their military and weaken their economy, the Iranian people are ready to rise up and get rid of this government.
Right.
And that would be. And I'm sorry, that would be a good thing then. I am a little concerned about that. There was a flight recently, this was yesterday, the middle of the week, they've been saying there's a flight that was a Ukrainian flight in Iran crashed and everybody on board, 160 people were killed.
Oh, wow.
And yet didn't release the black box on it, and I'm not 100% sure that it's one of those weird stories. We're going to see what comes out of it, because it's way too much of a weird coincidence that Iran is firing missiles at the United States, ready to take aggressive action, and a plane mysteriously crashes and everyone on board dies. That from my own conspiracy theory screaming side of my weirdness, that sounds just too coincidental.
Right.
It might just be a coincidence, but it's a hell of a coincidence type of thing.
Right.
So anyway, it's going to be an interesting.
No matter what, Trump's evil, and he can do no right.
And he can do no right if you stand for nothing at all, but only stand against something, and that's what the left is. We stand for nothing. We just stand against Trump. Like I said, I don't know how they're going to win, unless, of course, the high-tech companies manage to switch the vote around enough,
and that can happen.
And that can happen. We've been, I've been doing some stuff on that recently. We were talking about that when what happens when Google sends out a remind vote, but only to Democrats? How many hundreds of thousands to low millions vote does that matter? Everyone yelled Hillary Clinton ran the popular vote by 3 million votes. Well, probably Google probably was responsible for most of those.
Yeah.
When the Democrats ran 2 years ago, when we had the intermediate election and the Democrats took the House of Representatives, how many of that's just because social media is favoring Democrats and not Republicans?
Right. And there's no way to tell.
There isn't really any way to tell, and that's the weird part about it. So exactly, why are we worried about Russian interference? We should probably be worried about Google interference.
So let's say all of your crazy conspiracy theories are true, and first, the DNC cheats to get Hillary the nomination. Then the Hillary campaign pays money for the Steele dossier while Obama's FBI is spying on the Trump campaign illegally, with the fabricated Steele dossier information. Correct me if I'm wrong on this.
And getting warrants, using it to get warrants from the FISA court to investigate.
Right. And then having her top donor, Google, or Google's parent company,
Alphabet or whatever. The company.
Manipulating whatever they can. We don't know because there's no way to oversee it or track it. Or is there anything I'm missing?
Well, the only thing is, I don't think, because the 2016 election, they were so convinced Hillary was going to win.
Yeah.
I think that they did a little manipulation, but they didn't do it big. I think in 18, during the reason why the Democrats have the House, probably a lot of that. Well, fairness sake, okay, I think the Google probably had an effect in that. They probably were much more active. A lot of the social media is much more active for Democrats. But the other side of that is also in intermediary elections, the party in power tends to lose seats.
Yeah.
So, between the two, that's how Pelosi got control of the House. And along comes the impeachment that nobody cared about and has gone nowhere. The Democrats have held an impeachment and nobody's showed up for it, apparently. That's another situation right now. Is there actually going to be a trial, or is the Senate just going to end up throwing it out? We'll have to see what happens in the next, over the next few days.
Well, coming up, we're going to talk some Star Wars, maybe some Mando, some Mandalorian.
I figure those are the ones. Let's hit those today.
You're listening to Johnny and the Professor. Politics.
This is actually what makes this whole thing so comical.
Pop culture.
This is something that they're going to be prioritizing, and that is diversity. Now, this is stupid.
Common sense in senseless times. This is Johnny and the Professor. Common sense in senseless times.
All of the people who are ascribed to this liberal, progressive ideology, the people at the pool who didn't like that you were reading my book, Deborah Messing, she's another Hollywood hypocrite. She wants to know who's attending a Trump fundraiser so that then they can let their producers know or directors know the people they don't want to work with. This is McCarthyism. We have free speech in this country. We are allowed to vote for whomever we want. But the hate is so intense. They have a plot to remake America, to shut down the right, to make sure that we can get as many legals coming in as 144,000 in 1 month. Give them a license and let them vote.
Contact the show at jpshowfm@gmail.com.
Well, it's Johnny and the Professor. We talk politics, pop culture, and presidential. I don't know if that sounds right. Not
presidential. Well, I don't know. Since we're going to be talking about Star Wars and Mandalorian, I'm not sure that How about empirical? Well, just empirical. We'll accent the P in that.
Okay. That works.
All right.
The first full season of The Mandalorian is over. Did you get to see it?
Yes, I did. And
what did you think?
And I really enjoyed it. I think it's the best Star Wars.
Was it perfect?
Nothing's perfect. Okay. But if I were going to critique it, I have to break out my nitpicking mind. I'd have to nitpick it rather than saying, okay, that was just wrong
or too convenient.
It's funny. It's a Western, is what it is. Which of course, Star Wars people, the original Star Wars. If you look at A New Hope, the young gunfighter and the old gunfighter, Ben Kenobi and young Luke. You can make the old Western analogy on that. People did at the time when the movie first came out, that it looked kind of like a Western, taking on the cattle barons and hopeless people and all that. It almost looked like a Western, but The Mandalorian definitely had that feeling.
Right.
And I really liked it a lot. We're going to, of course, do spoilers here, so if you haven't seen it, then, get a life and go watch it. Come on, it's a watch. But you've got, this interesting character who, of course, you never see his face until the very end of it. Having to do that portrayal without having to have a face in it. You've got, of course, bounty hunters, Baby Yoda. You've got Carl Weathers as Grief Karga, which I always like Carl Weathers' work. He's, of course, Apollo Creed from anybody from the Rocky. If people don't know who he is.
Right.
And I've always liked his work. He's really good in it. You have Gina Carano in it, who plays a female character in it whose name is Kara. She's a shock trooper from the old Republic.
At least they didn't get Ronda Rousey, I guess.
And they got it was funny. I was doing a little reading on it, and apparently when Favreau wrote the story for this, that part he always figured was going to be played by her. I guess he had seen her in other work, probably in Deadpool, because she's Angel in Deadpool.
Right.
If you remember from that, because she punches Colossus right in the ball bearings. But her character was always supposed to be this kind of tough, and I buy it with her because she's a tough female.
Yeah, she's legitimately tough.
Yeah, so, and it works really fine. The opposite of what we would consider Ray, but we'll talk about that later.
Ooh,
so
you toxic man.
Well, but how can I be toxic? Like I'm saying, this woman is great. I can't be toxic.
I don't know. I'm trying to just do what they do.
Yeah, well,
I'm trying to talk like the woke.
Yeah, well, I think the first thing you'd have to do is have a section of your brain removed for that to work.
Okay.
But anyway, so I thought it was a really good series from beginning to end, and I'm looking forward to the second season. They're already working on it.
Right.
And, it's going to be, and apparently Grief's character, Carl Weathers, is in it, and Carano's character's in it next season also, and the weird part about it, I'd like to know what their stories are. And that's how you can tell you have an interesting story, because I was actually I want to know more about the main character, the Mandalorian character, who I'm in it, but I'd also like to know about the other characters' stories. And that's the difference. Do you care about the characters? And the answer is yes, I did.
Now, do you understand the significance of the very last part where the bad guy comes out of that TIE fighter with that sword?
Oh, yeah. In the Mandalorian history in Star Wars, in the canon, the Mandalorians fought wars against the Jedi Knights early on. And they had one leader, I think he was House Vizsla, and that's pulling up some information if that's accurate.
Right.
And he was a Jedi Knight Mandalorian, and he had a black saber, a black lightsaber. So the character that came out in the end of that was Moff. What was his character's name?
I forgot.
But when the Moff comes out of his TIE fighter in the end and he cuts out with that black saber, that means he was involved in the purge of Mandalore. I mean, the killing off of all of them, and he had to get a hold of that saber from that. Because the purge of the Mandalorians happened the same time as the purge of the Jedi Knights back in the first Star Wars movies, back in this Revenge of the Sith time.
Right.
So, I mean, it all ties in together. So
that was a famous sword there.
Right.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, the sword was wielded, it was used to unite the Mandalorian clans into one group. So, bringing it back into the story with this Mandalorian character as one of the, and with a Force-using little Jedi, Force-using Force Awake baby Yoda. I mean, there's too much stuff moving there. I wouldn't be surprised we may see this Mandalorian may go down the Jedi path, maybe.
Disney and Lucasfilm is really dropping the ball on this because they still don't have legitimate Baby Yoda toys out. Now, they should have had this out a long time ago. I mean, even by the first episode, before the first episode, you would think that they would have Baby Yoda toys and whatever. It's not until, I think, May the Baby Yoda plush toy will be out.
And that just amazes me. Because generally you're like I said, they'll shove movie stuff left and right. I don't think they understood how good this was going to be. I think because they kind of let it alone and they go, well, Jon Favreau's writing it and we'll just kind of trust him and all. But everybody involved, every episode was directed by different people, though some of them more than one.
Men and women.
Right. And
of different races, different sexual preferences,
whatever.
Yeah.
They all were really fine. I think the last one was Taika Waititi, the one who directed Thor. He also does the voice of the bounty hunter robot
See, and I'm real critical of Taika Waititi inserting himself into all of his movies instead of hiring voice actors who've paid their dues. He's always like, oh, well, let me do it. I'll do it. Do it.
I guess there is something to be said for
I'm
that.
a little overcritical about that kind of stuff.
Although I would point out, I think that in the second Mandalorian, when he came in and he brought all the new Bessemer steel.
Mm-hmm.
One of the Mandalorians was kind of getting on his case about it. I think from what I heard, that was Jon Favreau.
It was, yeah.
So I mean, he put himself. He wrote it. He wrote it, and he had his. He had a mask on, so you didn't know. You can make the argument about Waititi, though. I always thought in Thor Ragnarok, everyone when Korg was so cool. I go, yeah, well, if you say so.
Right.
He didn't really do much for me. Yeah, it's the best thing they have. I'm actually interested in Star Wars because of that. The only problem I have with that is that looming in the future of the Mandalorian are the Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, and The Rise of Skywalker.
Right.
And so it's going, this is really good, and we're really interested. And ahead of us lies a sewer.
Right.
I mean, where they're going to be. They're flying their speeders right into the sewage here.
Apparently, the Mandalorian is going to explain how the First Order comes to power. So they're going to try to clean up the horrible sequel trilogy.
Well, the only problem is I don't think there's only so much you can't. I mean, because think about it. During the Mandalorian's time, this takes place a few years after the Battle of Endor.
After Sith.
Yeah, after Return of the Jedi.
Oh, yeah, excuse me, yeah.
So
you're right.
Luke Skywalker is still around.
Right.
He's probably beginning to train Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really hoping that they're going to do like an alternate timeline and not have him be doomed to the Last Jedi movie and his horrible, stupid death in that.
Right.
So I guess maybe we should just shift over and talk a little about The Rise of Skywalker.
Okay.
We both have seen it.
And Doomcock's predictions, the spoilers or the leaks, were pretty accurate. And unfortunately, in a lot of cases. Unfortunately, they were accurate. They were right on.
I'll say something good about the movie, okay? It had really good music.
Yeah.
John Williams, and it had really good special effects. And other than that, I have a hard time finding much else that I liked about it.
Did you like the acting?
No.
Did you like the writing?
The writing was busy. The problem with this movie, it was a bunch of... When I watched this movie, I'll give you a dramatic a drama critic opinion of it rather than, you know, a fan critic. It starts plots and ends plots. It introduces characters, and I go, hi, we have this character who is an interest to Poe's character, and now she's gone because she's given him the magic thing to get him through the thing. And then this person pops up, and this thing happens, and now they're gone, and we move on to something else. And here's a nice former stormtrooper character who's making interesting interests for Finn, and now we don't really know about her, and she's just out there. She's going to run off with Lando because Lando's a horn dog and she's cute.
Right.
Which I don't have a problem with that. Somebody told me they were going to make her Lando's daughter, but I'm glad they didn't do that. That'd have been a little too...
Right, yeah.
Yeah, but...
I understand that she is. They just didn't address it. It's like it's deleted scenes. But
well, I think they were going to, but I thought somebody said maybe that's just a little too tight.
Maybe.
Things start and end for no reason. The classic example of that is, and you know, they run their crawler in the beginning, and the voice of the Emperor is heard, and everyone is like going, "Holy crap!" And I go, "We never heard the voice of the Emperor unless you watched the previews for it. Then his voice is in that." And it's like they literally introduced the Emperor saying, "We have no villain." Okay, so we're going to take the villain from you know, Empire Strikes Back from the classic, and we're going to pump him back out here again because we have nobody for them to fight against here. And then it goes, and then here's a storyline. So okay, Palpatine's alive. So did he just not get vaporized when he hit the power source? Is he a clone of the original one?
Right.
You know, is he? You know, I know what he is. He's a plot device, okay? and he has 1,000 super star destroyers, all of which now have planetary destroying weapons, so we don't need a Death Star anymore.
They're all little mini Death Stars.
Mini Death Stars, I guess. You know, instead of mini me's, right? It's ludicrous because, again, if you look at canon in Star Wars, the reason the way the Death Star super laser works is it uses the same crystal that lightsabers use.
Right.
And they have to be huge for them to do that because they're I've drawn a blank on what the crystals are called.
Crystals.
Very good, Kyber crystals. And somebody is, but so all those destroyers, those 1,000 destroyers would need huge Kyber crystals, which are hard to find.
Yeah.
You know, and everything. So it's like you're not even paying attention to your own canon.
Right.
I'm looking at this and going, and exactly, Star Destroyers have, let's say 1,000 people minimum, and there are 1,000 of them, so 1,000 times 1,000. So Palpatine's on his little world in the middle of nowhere feeding 1 million people. You know, for how many years? And not plus the at least 2 or 3 million it takes to build them.
Right.
And, you know, underwater? I mean, they were all underwater. They like rise up. I mean, did he build? What did they? I mean, it's so. The plot is so convoluted and that it doesn't make any sense. And they're trying to clean up the mess, but obviously, I'm sorry, to clean up Ryan
Johnson,
Ryan Johnson's crap needs a bigger shovel than Abrams has.
Right.
I mean, unless Abrams could say Abrams should have just changed the timeline. That's his answer for everything, apparently. So I mean, you know, that would have been maybe they should have had somebody go back in time and change everything.
What all could he have done? You know,
the answer is probably nothing. When you've got I can't use the word I was going to use because it would have storm as a second part and another word in the front that I can't
like
use.
Like a crap storm?
We'll go with crap storm. How's that? when you're in the middle of a crap storm, all you really can do is going to keep your head down and try not to get in your eyes, get in your mouth, because that's all he was doing. From the Last Jedi, totally screwed the pooch so much.
I forgot to tell you. I don't know if you caught on to this, but okay, they're not doing well. The movie isn't going to do, you know, that well at all. And apparently JJ didn't want to bring the Emperor back, but Kathleen Kennedy kind of made him insert the Emperor. There was a lot of things that JJ wanted to do but was told he couldn't do. At least that's the rumor.
Well, and that may or may not be true. I mean, I don't know that for a fact, one way or the other. But I don't see how they didn't.
These are Doomcock rumors, and he's been pretty spot on.
But the problem is that if you didn't have the Emperor, who's your villain? Who's your villain for the third movie? They got rid of
Kylo Ren.
Kylo, he was an annoying little boy from the first movie. I mean, I looked at Kylo Ren and they go, he's in his pseudo Darth Vader suit. Oh, he looks so cool and he does this and that. And then he has like temper tantrums and he takes off his mask and he looks like a geeky kid that he is.
Right.
And you just went, where's the villain here? You know, where's the villain? And then so we have Stokes or whatever. Snoke.
Yeah. Snoke was supposed to be it, but Ryan.
And then they killed him off. Then they killed him off in the second movie.
Right.
You know, with all the, you know, he had no, you know, value whatsoever. I mean, it's just like, so unless you were going to, you'd have needed in the second movie introduced who made Snoke. And then maybe you'd have had, but then who would it have to have been? I mean, unless they were going to find a way to bring Darth Vader back, which, you know, that would have. They could have. I mean, hell, they could have cloned Darth Vader easier than they could have cloned. Then they could have cloned the Emperor, unless the Emperor has.
Did you see all those Snoke clones the Emperor had in his room there?
Yeah, they were saying he's like, you know, I guess it's his. Everybody has to have a hobby. Some people macrame. He clones.
It was kind of creepy though when he's like, "I've been the voice inside your head," and he shifts from like Snoke's voice to Darth Vader's voice to. I thought that was kind of creepy the way they did that.
I have been every voice you have ever heard inside your head.
Oh, Palps is a good villain. I don't have an argument with old Palpatine. I have some problems with him in the first trilogy part, but I won't get into it. Once they make him the Emperor, other than I thought Vader should have truly betrayed him and let Skywalker kill him in Return of the Jedi. I thought that my ending is simple. When Luke swung the lightsaber and Vader blocked, I'd had Vader block and then turn the saber off, and Luke would have killed the Emperor. And then Vader would have looked at him and said, "Now, my son, we can rule the galaxy as is intended." That would have been such a cool scene to have Luke having to deal with Vader as the new ruler of the Empire and his father, and having to try to save him at that point. Think of how great that would have been. But that's not what we got. And that in Ewoks, but we won't get into that. Ewoks are very useful, though. If you have a good catapult, you can throw them at people. And
right.
You know, that's about the best use of them. They hit, and people get so disgusted they want to stop fighting.
And, you know, people were so critical of Jar Jar Binks.
You mean Jar Jar Binks, the Sith Lord that was actually behind it all?
Right. The same one.
You know, meet you strong in the dark side.
Yeah. YouTube, the Jar Jar Binks evil Sith Lord theory. It's pretty good.
It's got to be better than what they have.
Oh.
So
he was the comic relief. He was for the kids part. You know.
Okay.
I accept George Lucas's vision. That's all.
Oh, you know, okay. I accept it too, and I like it. I mean, we're talking about this, and Star Wars is a big part of culture. I mean, you say, "May the Force be with you," and everyone knows what you're talking about.
And, you know, George Lucas invented technologies that people use in movies every day now.
Right.
You know.
I mean, I don't take anything away from him.
Just Ewoks.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, the sheer yield of merchandising, you know.
Oh, yeah.
What you have to do with that is that when you want to know about the problem with Star Wars, you have to quote yogurt from Spaceballs.
Yeah. Because
of course the real money comes from merchandising.
Right.
Because that's where the real money comes from.
And he's a merchandising king.
I know, and that was all the Ewoks were for, and I can understand that. Rather than have a good movie and say use the Wookiees or some other race that looked tough, let's use the Ewoks instead. And again, they can take out a walker, but in The Mandalorian it took the best thing of two great warriors combining in a trap to take out one of those walkers. Ewoks can take them out with spears and rocks. Yeah, we won't get into that. Okay, I'll stop complaining.
Hey, who made The Mandalorian?
That's true, but sometimes sometimes things happen in spite of people rather than in favor of it. The Mandalorian is good in spite of Disney, I think.
Ooh.
Not because of Disney. I think this Kennedy probably has little voice in it because of Favreau having prominence. Because
right.
I mean, you know, Favreau's the director that started the Marvel Universe.
Right.
I mean, it's Iron Man. That's Jon Favreau. So you
happy.
Give him as much credit as for getting the movies going almost as you can with Robert Downey Jr.
Did you watch Ricky Gervais at the Golden Globes?
Well, yeah, that was the other thing. That was pretty funny.
That's a show about a man who wants to kill himself because his wife dies of cancer, and it's still more fun than this. Okay? Spoiler alert, season 2 is on the way, so in the end, he obviously didn't kill himself. Just like Jeffrey Epstein. Shut up! I know he's your friend, but I don't care. You like to make your own way here in your own plane, didn't you?
He killed it.
Yeah, he did. The funny part about it was that he didn't say anything that
untrue.
That wasn't untrue at all. He just told them the truth.
Apple roared into the TV game with a morning show, a superb drama, a superb drama about the importance of dignity and doing the right thing, made by a company that runs sweatshops in China. So, well, you say you're woke, but the companies you work for, I mean, unbelievable. Apple, Amazon, Disney. If ISIS started a streaming service, you'd call your agent, wouldn't you? So, if you do win an award tonight, don't use it as a platform to make a political speech, right? You're in no position to lecture the public about anything. You know nothing about the real world. Most of you spent less time in school than Greta Thunberg. So, if you win, right, come up, accept your little award, thank your agent and your God,
and you could tell there was very nervous laughter.
Right.
There were some dead silences a couple of times.
Some of the looks were pretty peed off, too.
Oh, yeah. You know, they were talking about it. Again, but it was a good career move for him because it's not going to hurt him really.
Right. The Office, I think, I don't even know if The Office over there in the UK is even on, anymore. It's probably in syndication, but.
Right. So, I mean, why do I care about this? And he just literally, I mean, how many hits did that speech get? How many on YouTube? How many millions of people? And I can tell you, I didn't know who Ricky Gervais was until this, last week.
Oh, yeah?
I didn't know who it was. I mean, if you'd have said, I might have said, is he a comedian? It's probably what I'd have said. That had been my guess. I think I had a vague memory, and then I watched that and I said, okay, yeah. So anyway, I think as far as, pop culture stuff, the Star Wars movies are over. We're not going to see any for a while. This is probably a good thing. We'll see The Mandalorian. Maybe enough time will go by that they'll allow... like I said, the only problem with The Mandalorian is it going to have to sculpt into the movies eventually.
Yeah.
And there's no way to really... I mean, Lucas's original idea, I read some of the writers who were originally writing on Lucas's third trilogy, and some of them did some interviews and wrote some articles on it. And they originally had like a male and female characters that were going to be young ones who were going to be Force adepts, I think brother and sister, probably kind of what became of Kylo and Ren. Rey.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. And it's Kylo Ren, and yet he was the only problem he said is that when he was going to bring Luke into the story as the Jedi Master, to train. But when he did it, it became Luke's story. Mm-hmm. And that was his problem. When you're writing a third set of movies, don't you want other people? I go, the movies have always been Luke Skywalker's story. It's Luke Skywalker's father's story. It's Luke Skywalker becoming a Jedi story. And the third movies were supposed to be Luke Skywalker as a Jedi Master stories.
Right.
And that was their mistake.
Well, that'll do it for this episode of Johnny and the Professor. How can they find us on the interwebs?
Well, of course, they can always send email to us at jpsowshowfm@gmail.com. And then, of course, we have our Johnny and the Professor channel on YouTube, where I'll be posting this one after we broadcasted it. And then, of course...
Facebook.com/JPShowFM.
That too.
This has been Johnny and the Professor. Politics.
This is actually what makes this whole thing so comical.
Pop culture.
This is something that they're going to be prioritizing, and that is diversity. Now, this is stupid.
Common sense in senseless times.